Okay, in this very short video, I'm going to be quick about this one. Quick hitter. I'm going to get something off my chest a little bit. I had a Facebook friend ask whether I could make a video about quarantines and curfews and stuff like that, you know, whether those things are constitutional, isolation orders, etc. And I said that I would. And the concern from the person who asked about that was so many people seem to think that quarantines are unconstitutional and are claiming on social media, right, where we get our information these days, that that quarantines are baldly unconstitutional. And in fact, that observation is correct. When you go on social media, you run into a lot of what I call Facebook philosophers who are busy proclaiming the legality or illegality of policies that they don't know much about, the constitutionality of quarantines when they don't know much about the Constitution. And so I've been making this series of videos hoping maybe that it would elevate the level of discussion around this stuff in some tiny, small way. But I do make the mistake once in a while of going on Facebook and poking around for if anything that I've posted has been shared or people are talking about it, what people are saying. And I came across this, and I wanted to talk about this because this illustrates, I think, the problem that my friend was pointing out, but even bigger problems than that. So I found this, this Facebook post, and I'm not, here I've cut out the name. I don't want to embarrass anybody, at least not that much. But I found this comment on a Facebook post. Government-imposed quarantines are not constitutional, right? That's a blanket statement, and are an unprecedented infringement on civil liberties. This is a fact, all caps, not an opinion. Now, first of all, putting something in all caps doesn't make it a fact. Now, to whoever wrote this, let me assure you that what you just wrote is an opinion and not a fact. And this illustrates one of the grave threats to a democratic republic, right? And in our case in particular, right, the United States, is the abject failure of tens of millions of Americans, right, either on purpose or because they can't, right, to discern what is a fact and what is a mere assertion, right, and to distinguish between mere assertions and actual, empirically provable, observable facts. You can watch footage of press conferences and political rallies where almost nothing that is said, right, almost nothing that is said is factual, right, where almost everything that is said is either counterfactual or non-factual, right, either runs counter to observable fact, right, and provable fact, or is just a mere characterization, right, it has no factual basis whatsoever. Okay, so I'm wearing a white collared shirt. That's a fact. You can see it on the video, right? This is an ugly shirt. That is not a fact. That is an assertion or an opinion, right? Similarly, the 10th Amendment reserves certain powers, right, to the states is a fact. You know it's a fact because you can turn to the 10th Amendment and look at it, and that's what it says, right? On the other hand, the power reserved to the states does not include the power to enact or enforce quarantine laws. That is an opinion, right? That is not written in the Constitution, and in fact, as we're going to see here, runs contrary to court holdings and our national history. Do you also notice that the certitude with which somebody asserts something tends to be inversely proportional to their actual understanding of the subject matter? Look at the certitude here, right? That's the nerve of somebody to say that I said it and therefore it's a fact, right? Now, I've been teaching law for 18 years. I've been teaching constitutional law for over 10 years. You would never see me get on Facebook and post something like this as an absolute. I tell students all the time, right? I hope students would back me up on this. The most common answer after we're done going through a fact pattern, right? And somebody says, so who's going to win? The most common answer from me is, I don't know. I'm very comfortable saying that. I don't know. Are some quarantines unconstitutional? Probably. Can a quarantine be valid as to some people and invalid as to other people? Probably. Can a quarantine be valid on its face but not valid as applied to certain situations? Could be. I don't know. One of my favorite things to say in class is, right, who wins, who cares, right? The point is to be able to discuss these things intelligently and to know what rules are in play and to know the way the analysis works, right, and to apply the rules as best we can. Now let's look at these assertions on their merits, right, in addition to the temerity of the statement. The first idea contained in that statement, right, which was asserted to be a fact, was that government-imposed quarantines are not constitutional, right? They are unconstitutional, and that was made as a blanket statement. Now I want to call your attention to a U.S. Supreme Court case from 1824, early in the Republic, right? That's only, what, 101 year after Marbury versus Madison, so very early in the Republic. And a case where the court was talking about commerce, interstate commerce, and Congress's, the federal government's ability to regulate commerce. I want to read this, this outtake and then talk about the context in which this was said. So this is the U.S. Supreme Court, right, talking in 1824. There is an immense mass of legislation which embraces everything within the territory of a state, right, so we're talking about the power of a state here, which can be most advantageously exercised by the states themselves. So we're talking about the power of states. Inspection laws, and gee, look what we see here in red. Quarantine laws, this is 1824. Health laws of every description. That's a pretty broad statement. Health laws of every description, so not just quarantines, but isolation orders and all the rest. As well as laws for regulating the internal commerce of a state are component parts of this mass. So in this passage, the Supreme Court clearly identifies quarantine laws and health measures as being within a state's power. Now, I mentioned context. The context of this passage was the court discussing what powers are reserved to the states as a constitutional matter under the 10th Amendment. So the court here says that quarantine laws are constitutional, right? That doesn't mean they're always applied in a way that's constitutional, or that every quarantine is constitutional, but the blanket statement that quarantines are not constitutional is absolutely absurd on its face. I have here a list of quarantine laws from the website for the National Conference of State Legislatures, where it's available at the site that I put down there. And I stopped at the letter A. Right, here is a list of quarantine laws that have been enacted by the states and have not passed the letter A. So, not only has the U.S. Supreme Court and other federal courts consistently held that part of the state's police power is the authority to enact quarantine laws and other health measures, but states in fact have done that. So, unless all of these laws are unconstitutional, and I haven't found any court case that said that that's the case, then the assertion again that all quarantines are unconstitutional is an invalid assertion. And one more thing before I'm done with this very short video. And I'll post a second video in much more detail about when a quarantine might be unconstitutional, right? Because certainly there are circumstances where a quarantine might be applied in an unconstitutional way. But another part of this comment was, right, that this was an unprecedented abuse of civil liberties, right? These isolation orders and right, the way the government is managing this crisis. I invite you simply to Google the term Korematsu versus United States. Korematsu, right? That is the case, right, from the 1940s involving the internment of 112,000 people in the United States, including 65,000 United States citizens of Japanese ancestry, right? Not for probable cause, not for a health reason, but because of the racist, right, and ethnicity-based assumption that people of Japanese ancestry, even if they were U.S. citizens, might not be loyal to the United States during World War II, right? Again, the proposition that what's going on in the United States now is an unprecedented abuse of civil liberties, right? When we in our history, right, have slavery, internment of people based on their ethnic status, right, or their ethnic heritage, I don't know what to say about that, but I will say this: we have to stop this. We have to stop this. We have to stop getting on social media and listening to people who don't know what they're talking about and who haven't bothered to educate themselves in the least before espousing what they have to espouse. This is dangerous. So the answer to the question, are quarantines constitutional? Yes, under many circumstances, quarantines are constitutional. Okay, we have to start there. We have to start with reality, right? We have to start with precedent before we can move on to discuss whether in some of the circumstances going on in this country today, whether the government is going too far, which is entirely possible in some cases. But these people running around with their signs and their hysteria about civil liberties, right, as though constitutional guarantees are an absolute, which I covered in another video, and I'll cover in another video in the future. That isn't the case. And so back to the claim here, right? Government imposed quarantines are not constitutional, false, and are an unprecedented infringement of civil liberties. Absurd. This is a fact, not an opinion. It is not only an opinion, but it's a wrong one, right? It's not a fact. All right, I got that off my chest. I hope I did it in, I don't know, not too many minutes. I'll be back with another video in the next few days about more detail about quarantines. For anybody who cares or is interested, thanks for listening. Click like if you liked my rant, and subscribe and all that. Talk to you later.